The kingdom of Udu was once a land of joy and prosperity, ruled by King Obinna and Queen Adaeze. The royal couple was beloved by their people, their reign marked by peace and abundance. Yet, within the walls of the palace, a sorrow grew with each passing year. Queen Adaeze had borne many children, but none had survived beyond their first 7 days. Every birth was followed by tragedy, and the royal family's grief deepened with each loss. As the years passed, the kingdom began to whisper of a curse. Some said the gods had turned their backs on the royal family. Others claimed dark forces were at play. The pain of losing so many children became unbearable for the king and queen, and soon the entire kingdom shared in their despair. Healers, priests, and seers from across the land were summoned, but none could provide an answer. Desperate for a solution, King Obinna and Queen Adaeze sought out the most revered seer in the kingdom, a man known for his wisdom and deep connection to the spirit world. The seer, upon receiving the royal couple, revealed a truth that had long been hidden. "There is a shadow in your past, your majesty," the seer said gravely. "A grave wrong that has brought this curse upon your lineage." King Obinna's heart raced, for he knew of the sin the seer spoke of. In his youth, before he had ascended the throne, he had fathered a child with a young maidservant named Adaeze. Fearful of scandal and unwilling to acknowledge the child of a servant, he had cast Adaeze out of the kingdom, and as she left, she had cursed him, vowing that his line would suffer as hers had. The seer's words struck deep, and for the first time, King Obinna understood the true weight of his action. The children he and Queen Adaeze had lost were victims of his own wrongdoing. "Is there a way to undo the curse?" Queen Adaeze asked, her voice trembling with hope and fear. "To break the curse," the seer replied, "you must find Adaeze. Only when she forgives you and your child is acknowledged will the curse be lifted. Reconciliation is the key." The king's heart grew heavy. He had spent years trying to forget his past, but now it had returned with vengeance. Yet, as he considered the seer's word, he was also faced with an impossible dilemma. How could he tell his beloved wife, the queen, that another woman had borne his child? And despite the heavy burden on King Obinna's heart, he did not dare act on the seer's advice. The fear of losing Queen Adaeze, who had threatened to leave if he sought out Adaeze, paralyzed him. He couldn't bear to face the truth of his past action, nor could he imagine the consequences of reconciliation. One fateful day, desperate for another solution, Queen Adaeze decided to consult a different seer, one known throughout the kingdom as a giver of children. This female seer, wise beyond her years, had helped many barren women in the kingdom bear children after performing sacred rituals. The queen, hopeful that there was another way to ensure the survival of her next child, sought out this seer without her husband's knowledge. The seer welcomed the queen into her modest hut at the edge of the kingdom, far removed from the grandeur of the royal palace. With soft, knowing eyes, she listened as the queen explained her plight. Adaeze pleaded for a way to bear a healthy child, one who will live to inherit the throne. "There is a way," the seer said after a long silence, "but it requires great sacrifice. You must undergo a series of rituals to appease the spirit. But know this, the spirit may give, but they would always take something in return." Desperate and determined, Queen Adaeze agreed. She performed the required rituals, leaving the offerings in the sacred groves and following the instructions to the letter. The seer warned her once more before the final ritual, her voice low and filled with gravity. "Be careful with the child the spirit will give you," she said. "She will be precious, but her heart must be guided with wisdom and love, or she will bring sorrow to your kingdom." Months later, Queen Adaeze gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. The kingdom rejoiced, for at long last, a child of the royal family had survived. The king and queen named her Olanma, meaning precious gold, for she was their treasure, their hope for the future. As Olanma grew, she became the center of attention in the palace, adored by both parents and the people of Udo. Her every wish was granted, and no one dared to refuse her. But as the years passed, it became clear that Olanma's beauty was matched only by her temper. Spoiled by the endless attention and indulged in all her desires, she grew into a proud and arrogant young woman. Her temper was notorious throughout the kingdom. Olanma's anger flared at the smallest inconvenience, and she was quick to punish anyone who displeased her. Servants trembled in her presence, for a misplaced word or a mistake in her service could lead to severe consequences. Olanma would often shout at her maids, banishing them for any minor offenses, and she had no qualms about embarrassing people in public if they failed to meet her impossible standards. The villagers whispered about the princess in secret, for while they feared her wrath, they also pitied her. Some believed that the spirit had placed something dark within her, a shadow of the curse that still lingered over the royal family. Others simply saw a young woman who had never known boundary and never had been taught humility. Despite her temperament, Olanma's beauty attracted suitors from far and wide. Princes from neighboring kingdoms came to seek her hand in marriage, bringing lavish gifts and promises of alliance. However, Olanma turned them all away, finding fault with each one. Some she ridiculed openly, while others she sent away in disgrace, humiliated by her sharp tongue and unforgiving nature. Her parents, though concerned, did little to intervene. King Obinna, consumed with guilt over his past, could not bring himself to discipline the daughter he cherished so deeply. Queen Adaeze, too, allowed her daughter's behavior to continue, unwilling to curb the one child that had survived. The kingdom, meanwhile, grew restless once more. The people whispered among themselves, worried that the princess, despite her beauty, would never find a husband. Without a royal marriage, how could the future of Udo be secure? The throne needed an heir, and Olanma's refusal to marry only added to the growing tension in the land. News of Olanma's beauty and her cruelty spread far beyond the borders of Udo. Among those who heard of her was a powerful spirit, the Lord of Ghosts, who ruled over the restless souls and spirits that roamed the forest. The Lord of Ghosts had no love for mortals, but the stories of Olanma's behavior intrigued him. A mortal who mistreated others, especially those beneath her station, was of particular interest to him. The Lord of Ghosts decided it was time to teach the spoiled princess a lesson. He called upon his powers and summoned the spirit of the forest to assist him in creating a disguise. From the spirits, he borrowed the appearance of a mighty prince, tall, handsome, and dressed in the finest royal garments. His form was flawless, every detail crafted to perfection, designed to enchant anyone who looked upon him. With his guise complete, the Lord of Ghosts made his way to the kingdom of Udo. When he arrived at the palace gates, the guards were immediately struck by his regal bearing and handsome appearance. They rushed to announce his presence to the royal family. Princess Olanma, ever curious about new suitors despite her quick dismissals, agreed to meet the mysterious prince. The moment she laid eyes on him, her heart skipped a beat. He was like any other man that she had ever seen. Tall, strong, and exuding an air of authority that made her stomach flutter with excitement. The ghost prince, his eyes glimmering with mischief, spoke with confidence. "I am a prince from a far distant land," he said, his voice smooth. "I have come to ask for your hand in marriage." Olanma, for the first time, was at a loss for words. She was captivated by his presence, her usual sharpness dulled by the overwhelming attraction she felt. Without hesitation, she agreed to marry him. King Obinna, who had become more cautious over the years, was suspicious. "From which kingdom do you hail, mighty prince?" he asked, his tone careful. The ghost prince smiled, his expression serene. "My kingdom is far to the west, beyond the mountains," he replied smoothly. "I am the last of my royal line." Though the king's concern lingered, Queen Adaeze, eager for her daughter to finally marry, urged her husband to agree to the match. After much debate, the wedding was set, and the people of Udu prepared for a grand celebration. The day of the wedding arrived, and the entire kingdom of Udu was filled with excitement. The palace was adorned with the finest decorations, and the streets were lined with villagers eager to witness the marriage of their beautiful princess. Olanma, resplendent in her wedding attire, stood proudly at the altar, her heart racing with anticipation as she awaited the ghost prince. When the prince arrived, he was accompanied by an entourage of ghostly figures, though to the human eye, they appeared as noblemen dressed in rich traditional garb. The drummers beat their drums, and the dancers moved with joyous energies, celebrating the union of the two royal families. The ceremony was grand, with lavish feasts and endless songs in honor of the royal couple. After the bride price was paid, the time came for Olanma to live with her new husband. The custom dictated that she was to be accompanied by her maids and guards, but the ghost prince refused. "I have come with my own," he said with a smile, gesturing to the entourage. "There is no need for more." Olanma's father hesitated, but Queen Adaeze, eager to see her daughter married, persuaded him to let Olanma go without further protection. After all, the prince had brought a large group with him, and the queen trusted her daughter's new husband. Reluctantly, the king agreed. Olanma bid her parents farewell, and the ghost prince led her out of the kingdom into the vast forest beyond. They traveled deep into the woods, further and further from Udu, and as they journeyed, Olanma began to notice some strange things. The prince's entourage seemed to grow smaller each day, with fewer and fewer figures trailing behind them. When she asked about it, the prince would reassure her with a charming smile, saying, "They have returned to prepare for your arrival in my kingdom." But something felt off. Olanma, used to being in control, began to feel uneasy. They had been traveling for days without reaching their destination, and the path through the forest seemed endless. Her frustration boiled over, and one evening she confronted the prince. "Why are we still traveling?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "I am Olanma, the daughter of King Obinna. You will answer to me, or you shall regret it." The ghost prince's smile faded, and a strange look crossed his face. For the first time, his charming demeanor slipped, and his eyes darkened. "You dare speak to me in this way?" His voice grew deeper, echoing through the forest like thunder. "Do you not know who I am?" Olanma, taken aback, stepped back in fear. What? What do you mean? She stammered. The prince let out a low, menacing laugh that sent chills down her smile. I am not a man. I am the Lord of Ghosts, and I have come to punish you for your wickedness. I have heard of your cruelty, your arrogance, and your lack of respect for those beneath you. Now you will learn the consequences of your actions. His clothes dissolved into tattered rags, and his once regal figure now appeared gaunt and skeletal. Olanma screamed in terror, but there was no one to hear her cries. She fell to her knees, begging for mercy. Please forgive me. I didn't know. I will change, I swear. But the Lord of Ghosts only laughed, his voice cold and unforgiving. It is too late for you, Olanma. You must now suffer the fate you have earned. Back in the kingdom of Udu, weeks passed with no word from Olanma. At first, the villagers were relieved by her absence, for her reign of terror had come to an end. But as time went on, King Obinna and Queen Adaeze grew increasingly worried. They sent messengers to inquire about the Ghost Prince's kingdom, but none of the messengers ever returned. Eventually, a royal envoy was sent to find Olanma and bring news of her well-being. When they reached the kingdom where the Ghost Prince was said to hail from, the envoy was met with shocking news. There was no living prince in that kingdom. The prince who had once ruled there had died in battle many years ago. The revelation sent aftershocks through Udu. The king and queen, devastated by the loss of their daughter, once again sought the counsel of the seer who had first warned them about the cause. The seer's words were grave. Your daughter has been taken by the spirit as punishment for your actions, the seer told them. The curse that was placed upon your family still lingers. The only way to bring Olanma back is to reconcile with the maidservant your husband wronged all those years ago. The truth of the king's past now hung heavily over the royal family. Queen Adaeze, who had once refused to allow her husband seek out Ezine, was forced to confront the reality of the curse that had haunted their lives. With Olanma's fate hanging in the balance, the queen finally relented. King Obinna, filled with remorse, ordered his servant to search far and wide for Ezine, the woman he had wronged so many years ago. Messengers were sent to every corner of the land, carrying the king's plea for forgiveness. Months passed before the search bore fruit. At long last, the king's messenger located Ezine in a distant village, living with her son, the child King Obinna had rejected and banished. When word reached the king that Ezine had been found, he traveled to their village himself. He arrived with a heavy heart, ready to face the consequences of his actions. When he saw Ezine for the first time in many years, his guilt overwhelmed him. She had aged, but the pain of the past was still visible in her eyes. Obinna knelt before her, his voice breaking. Ezine, I have wronged you in so many ways I cannot ever undo. I beg for your forgiveness, for only your forgiveness can bring my daughter back. Tears filled Ezine's eyes as she looked down at the man who had once cast her aside. For years, she had carried the weight of his betrayal, raising their son alone and far from the life she had once known. But as she looked at the broken man before her, she knew that she could not carry the burden of anger any longer. I forgive you, she whispered, her voice soft but steady. But I cannot forget what you did. Obinna nodded. understanding the depth of her pain. He then turned to Ezine's son, who stood beside her. The young man was the spitting image of the king in his youth, and there was no doubt that he was Obinna's son. "I have wronged you as well, my son," the king said, his voice filled with regret. "But I ask you to come home to Udu, where you will be honored as the true crown prince." The young man, Ezine's son, stood tall before King Obinna. His eyes, though kind, held the weight of a life lived in the shadow of a secret lineage. His name was Chiemeka, meaning God has done well. A name chosen by Ezine to remind herself that despite her trials, the gods has blessed her with a son. Chiemeka had grown into a man of strength and wisdom, traits his father immediately recognized. Though the years has been hard for Ezine and her son, they had lived with dignity. Chiemeka was a respected member of his village, admired for his leadership and companion, traits King Obinna knew would make him a fine prince. "Will you come with me, Chiemeka?" Obinna asked, his voice filled with hope. "Will you return to your rightful place as the heir of the throne of Udu?" Chiemeka looked at his mother, who gave him a nod of approval. The decision was his to make. After a moment's thought, Chiemeka stepped forward. "I will come," he said firmly, "but not for riches or power. I will come to heal the wounds of my mother, to right the wrongs of the past, and I will not do so alone. My mother will return with me, and she will be honored for the sacrifices she made." Obinna, overwhelmed with emotion, nodded in agreement. He knew that this was the only path forward, a path of healing and redemption. The return of King Obinna, Ezine, and Chiemeka to Udu was a momentous occasion. The entire kingdom gathered to witness the arrival of the lost son and his mother. Whispers spread through the crowd as people marveled at how much Chiemeka resembled his father, the king. Many had not even known of his existence, and now here he was, standing tall and proud next to the king. Ezine, once a banished maidservant, was given a royal welcome. The king decreed that she should be treated with the highest respect, and lands and wealth were bestowed upon her as compensation for the years of suffering she had endured. The villagers, some of whom had once scorned her, now looked upon her with admiration for her strength and resilience. The palace, too, was in a state of transformation. Queen Adaeze, though still grappling with her feelings, knew that this was the reconciliation, and it was necessary. She greeted Ezine with guarded warmth, knowing that her place as queen was secure, but also recognizing that Ezine's role in the kingdom's history could not be ignored. For the first time in years, there was a sense of peace within the royal family, a peace that had eluded them for so long. Chiemeka was officially named Crown Prince of Udu, and the kingdom celebrated the return of the royal bloodline. But amidst the joy, there was still a shadow that loomed: the absence of Princess Olanma. Olanma had been wandering in the ghostly realm for what felt like an eternity. The once proud and haughty princess was now broken, her beauty faded, her spirit weary. She had begged the Lord of Ghosts for mercy, but his punishment had been harsh. She had been forced to confront the cruelty she had inflicted on others, reliving each moment of wickedness through the eyes of those she had wronged. One day, as she wandered through the ghostly forest, she heard a voice calling her name. It was faint at first, but it grew louder. Olanma, desperate for any hope of escape, followed the sound. The voice belonged to her father, King Obinna, who had sought her in the spirit world through rituals performed by the seer. Olanma, my daughter, come back to us. The king's voice echoed through the trees. I have made amends. The curse is lifted. Come home. With those words, the grip of the ghostly world began to loosen around Olanma. Slowly, the forest around her faded, and she found herself standing at the edge of the village, weak and disoriented, but alive. When the villagers saw her, they gasped in shock. The once beautiful princess was now a shadow of her former self. Her clothes tattered, her eyes hollowed, but there was something different about her. The arrogance that had once defined her was gone, and it was replaced by quiet humility. The news of Olanma's return spread quickly, and soon she was brought to the palace. Queen Adaeze, who had been mourning her daughter's absence, rushed to embrace her, tears streaming down her face. King Obinna, too, was overjoyed, though his heart ached to see what had become of his beloved daughter. Olanma, however, did not ask for sympathy. She knew she had brought this fate upon herself. I have learnt my lesson, she said quietly to her parents. I have seen the pain I have caused, and I now know what it means to suffer. But I have also seen the love you have for me, and I am ready to change. Her parents, though heartbroken by her ordeal, were grateful to have her back. The villagers, too, were cautious but hopeful that Olanma had truly changed. They had witnessed the transformation of their once square princess into a humbled woman. As the years passed, Olanma became a different person. The once spoiled and wicked princess transformed into a healer, using her knowledge of the spirit world to help those in need. It was said that she could communicate with both the living and the dead, and people from far and wide came to seek her wisdom. Olanma never remarried, and many believe it was because she was bound to the Lord of Ghosts. Some whispered that she still visited the ghostly realm from time to time, keeping her connection to the spirits intact. Others believed that she had been changed forever by her ordeal and no longer desired a life of royalty. Chiemeka, meanwhile, proved to be just and a wise crown prince. Under his leadership, the kingdom flourished, and the people of Udu enjoyed a time of peace and prosperity. Ezinne, now a respected figure in the kingdom, lived her days in comfort, having found peace after years of hardship. King Obinna, though aging, was content, knowing he had reconciled with his past and that his kingdom was in good hands. Queen Adaeze, too, found solace in the fact that her family had been restored, though the scars of the past would never truly fade. Together, they had broken the curse that had once haunted their lives, and though Olanma's path had been one of hardship, she emerged stronger, wiser, and with a heart open to the lessons she had learned. Years later, long after King Obinna and Queen Adaeze had passed on, the story of Princess Olanma became legend. She was remembered not for her beauty or her cruelty, but for her transformation. Her life served as a reminder to the people of Udu that no matter how far she falls, redemption is always possible. Olanma became a beacon of hope, a symbol of change and forgiveness, and though she lived the rest of her days quietly, her legacy endured, a testament to the power of humility, love, and the courage to face one's mistake. The kingdom of Udu continued to prosper under the rule of Chiemeka, the son who had been forgotten but was now cherished as the true heir. And Olanma, once feared and despised, became a source of inspiration to generations to come. The curse was lifted and peace reigned at last.